there is a sea of people who are copywriters, who do SEO writing, who do design, right? And at the end of the day, like what sets you apart? And it's your story. It's your background. It's what you've been able to do. And the more vocal you are about your story, like that's just going to further get the word out of like what you're doing and who you help and help you grow your business.
That was Allison Dittmer, content strategist, career-long marketer, and author of the Organic Freelancer newsletter. Allison was a marketing manager for almost 15 years before she transitioned to her full-time freelance gig of being an SEO content strategist for health and wellness brands. But perhaps her most admired skill set is the craft, quality, and consistency of her LinkedIn content. Don't go anywhere, because in this episode of Marketing by Design, Allison's about to reveal to us exactly what emerging marketers should do to stand out on LinkedIn, all of the traits and best practices of the best LinkedIn users, and how to use them to stand out and grow your career. And we get real with the hardships of freelancing and what a tough transition from marketer to freelance looks like. If you stick around, she's even going to share the daily habit that lands her paying clients as a career-long marketer turned freelancer. That has been verified by Allison through her years of making content, and she knows what's working. So without further ado, you and I are about to dive into an awesome, rich conversation with the one and only Allison Dittmer. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Marketing by Design, entry number 78. Let's dive on in.
Oh yeah, I have felt that more deeply. I feel like more recently, to tell you the truth, that whole balance between I see where I want to go in like 5 years, but I see also what I need to do from a financial standpoint to support my family and the income I need to bring in. And guess what? Those don't always play very well together right now, because what happens, and I'll just tell you like my experience this year, and you know, it's coming to the end of the year, so it's like reflection time, and I'm feeling it a little bit more. But what happens is I can get caught up so easily in creating my own content that I take a lot of time researching and thinking about what it is I want to write, that truthfully, I probably take time away from doing like cold pitching, reaching out, doing even more engagement like through LinkedIn, indirect messages. And so honestly, Andy, it's not that I regret where some of that time went this year, because I do think a lot of it was heavy on me creating content. I think it's becoming clearer to me right now that going into almost the end of year 2, I've got to buckle down like harder on just focusing on what I'm good at right now with clients, and allowing the content creation part of me that wants to eventually be more like, you know, the J. Klaus in the future. Like I've got to kind of like tame that just a bit so that I can be in a better financial place, because it's just tough. You've got to bring in a base amount, right, to be able to support yourself like as a freelancer. And I feel it like right now. And so I don't know if you noticed, but like more recently I updated my profile so it's really focused on the nutrition and wellness niche, because that was my like experience for 15 years in the corporate world. So I feel I've been thinking about that like a lot here the last couple months.
By the way, if you're a marketing leader or a business owner and you want to start your reading habit, the Essential Marketer's Reading Checklist, the best books on business and marketing that you can browse through, test drive, see if you like, included difficulties, page summaries, actionable quotes, and a link to the cheapest place online if you want to buy it and read the whole thing for yourself. Literally a place to test drive a library of all the most helpful books on business without having to buy it beforehand, and give you a chance if you want to see if you like it. First link in the description. It's actually crazy timing, because I just had a talk with a guy this morning. We were talking about, and he's a freelancer too. He's in copywriting, but he doesn't really make content. A lot of his, and this is the thing about LinkedIn, is that it can be used. It's social media, so it can be used productively and it can be used unproductively. And it's so hard, like while you're on it, even if you like time block and say like, okay, the first hour and a half of my day is spent doing LinkedIn, but your default behavior is on that platform, the lines can get so gray in terms of like effective time versus unproductive time, because there is an element of doom scrolling and just consumption that can take over. And I found that to be the case. If I'm not so conscious, I'm like, okay, I'm sending messages, I'm in the inbox. This is productive time. Whereas it's so you can't really, and like the part of it too is making content versus actually using it to make connections. So I think there's a line with it, and I would think you would agree, but there's a
Mhm.
line of it like one of them fulfills the other. Like your outreach, your connections, your cold pitches, everything, those become more effective when people see a profile that has a great name attached to it, like active content, like stuff that they can engage with. But on the other hand, it's like if you're not getting the volume of those out, responding to the ones that come in,
Mhm.
because messages create more messages, and keeping a ton of conversations going at once is just insane. But something I would want to ask you is, how much time do you spend on LinkedIn every day? And I mean, it's probably top of mind for you because you're trying to, I mean, not moderate behavior, but just shift
Yeah.
the behavior so that it fulfills what your goal is, which right now is, and that's the thing too, is that with content versus getting work on there, it has to fulfill. It's such a long term play, so you're always thinking about the
Yes.
future, but you have to fulfill your buckets and now, which is
Yeah.
so top of mind for me too.
Yeah.
So how do you balance the long-term vision on LinkedIn versus the short-term vision? And what's your experience been with spending maybe too much time there or not enough time there? And do you keep tabs on that?
Yeah, I think more recently I've tried to pay more attention to that because I think at first, like when you get on LinkedIn, you are creating content and you're getting excited about what you're posting. And so you're responding to everybody that's commenting. You're even taking like time just to go and look at other people's posts to make comments, right? Because what I tell even clients that I've worked with is even if you are, trying to build your brand and you are nervous about posting, well, just start commenting because that alone starts attracting attention and people start then engaging that way. It also like warms you up to the platform, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like that's an easy way to get started. But I think where you can get stuck a little bit or just kind of forget like the importance of what you're trying to do is you can get in this bubble of like, oh, I'm posting content, people are liking it, they're commenting, I'm responding to them, I'm having so much fun. Well, guess what? That's like an hour. That can be an hour in the morning of just
Definitely.
posting and responding and then going to those people's profiles,
Yeah.
commenting on their stuff. Not that that's not time well spent, but what I am noticing or what I'm trying to do is maybe scale back on the time a little bit of where I'm just going and looking and scrolling and commenting and scrolling and commenting and actively trying to look at people in my niche. So like I said, more recently, I made it like clear that I focus on website content and SEO blogs for nutrition and wellness businesses. So I'm going into the search, I'm putting my keyword in there for nutrition, I'm putting my keyword in there for wellness, and I'm looking at people who are, posting things or documents around those topics. And then I'm paying attention to the people who are commenting on those things to see if they're individuals that would perhaps have a website where they would need me to help them with that, whether it was like copy on the website pages themselves, like for a refresh or redesign, or they're trying to build out their blogs, or they have blogs, but when I take a look at them, they're not optimized at all. It's somebody writing on a topic and it may be even like a MD or, someone who is a nutrition expert, but they just don't have the knowledge of SEO and how to format everything. So I am just because there's just like so much time in the day, right? And the
Yeah.
goal right now is to get more client work. So
Hmm.
I have a few clients now that I work with. I have a couple like proposals out like as we speak. My goal is to send out more proposals and get more of those yeses. And so I need to scale back on just the scroll and comment, scroll and comment, scroll and comment, and take that time to intentionally search for people talking about these topics so I can really find my audience of who I want to serve. So that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do to just be more intentional with that LinkedIn time.
Yeah, man, dude. This is literally like so top of mind for me. This literally this morning. I was like,
Hard.
I need like a checklist where I have like a default behavior on there because the analogy I made was it's like it's almost like a dieting and exercise and food. It's like the same thing with social media. Is like You need to
Yes.
do it, and you're in the right place when you start doing these things. But too far on each default behavior, commenting, scrolling, engaging versus sending pitches, being too salesy and cold is like you kind of have to find that middle balance. Like food, like you have to eat a little bit of it, but you can't eat too much. It's
Right.
kind of a Goldilocks zone there. So if you
Yeah.
could distill, like as a freelance copywriter, SEO specialist in the marketing industry, what is your, if you could give like a checklist routine of your ideal LinkedIn habit in the morning. What does your LinkedIn habit look like if it could be optimized? I know it's not like that every day, but give us like a rundown of what that looks like for you. I know you gave it a little bit, but if you could be strict by the numbers, what does that TLDR look
Yeah.
like?
Okay, so the little wrench in all this is my kids get on the bus at like what I consider more peak posting time, which is around like that 8 o'clock hour.
Hmm.
So typically, this is what happens. I try to make sure I wake up early, I wake up between like 5 and 6, like every day, and try to get started because it gives me like a little time to like get on LinkedIn or finish something for a client or something. I like a little bit of
Wow.
work time before my kids get up because I feel like
Okay.
okay, it just gets me going.
Uh-huh.
So ideally, I always have a post drafted like in my LinkedIn area. So I don't use, that's the other thing. And I don't know if you do this. Do you have another
Mhm.
tool that you schedule LinkedIn posts for, or do you just post everything through LinkedIn?
So I schedule everything ahead of time, but it's through LinkedIn. So I'll
Okay.
edit and do everything on Saturdays and Sundays, and then I'll
Okay.
schedule it out throughout the week. I have heard too, and I know there's people that use like Typefully was a big one that I got recommended to. But I schedule out for other social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts for the videos. I use an external platform, and I see horrible engagement. Probably I don't spend as much
Right.
time there, but I'm like, okay, I'm scheduling this off platform. LinkedIn is the only one I schedule a post manually. Is there a
Mhm.
difference? And we'll get back to your kind of
It's
normal
interesting.
habits. Is there a difference in terms of if you do schedule manually through LinkedIn, if you undraft it and publish it manually, or it schedules and publishes on its own? Because that's kind of like the middle ground between scheduling off platform and doing it like totally manually. So what are your thoughts there?
Okay, so I don't use another tool to publish on LinkedIn. It is the only platform that I'm really active on. Like I have an Instagram profile, but I'm not
Hmm.
doing anything with it. And I want to do a YouTube channel because you and I have talked about that, just to kind of
Hmm.
house a lot of the shorts that I do for video
Yep.
content on LinkedIn. So right now, I just use LinkedIn really. So for me,
Hmm.
I'm not seeing the need yet to like purchase another tool to schedule my post. And to your point, I'm not sure that always having them scheduled ahead of time is really a good idea because, and I only say that because like
Hmm.
from my observations with content, I think it's better if I have it sitting in the draft like area ready to publish. And then what I do is based on the schedule of kids getting ready, or I'm making pancakes for my son, I'm just trying to like do different things. I like to engage a little bit. And I find that when I do that, when I put in like a good 10 minutes or 15 minutes, like engaging before I publish, I feel
Hmm.
like it does better. I can tell when I haven't engaged at all and I just publish. Because I'll be
Yeah.
honest, it doesn't get much. Like I can even see, like I go back into LinkedIn just to see like how many impressions I've had, and it's so low
Hmm.
compared to when I've just been on the platform and it's noticing that I'm on there and I'm engaging. I don't know.
Hmm.
That's my observation. That's what I've
Oh
noticed with
yeah.
most.
Yeah, I think it's like, okay, you got to show up and, put your time in to, so now,
Yeah.
that's kind
Yeah.
of frustrating to me
Give you
because there'll be
attention.
times where, yeah, especially like on my travel days, like I mentioned, where I'll be out and about from like bright and early. Like I have to get up at 6 a.m., go to the gym to leave by 7. And like, I mean, I stay up. We just talked about how much I work, so I stay up till usually 1 or 2. So like, it's one of those things too for me is like I will like on my when I have the time I'm always like okay I gotta warm it up today.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance too because I feel like not everyone spends as much time there as you or I, and we'll
Agreed.
have to be careful too because we could spend the whole time just talking about like the nuances of the stuff
Oh
because we
yeah.
resonate so hard with this. But yeah, like and more of a so like back to your kind of routine. So you start
Yeah.
off, warm it up, comment, engage.
Hmm.
Is your default behavior now that you're kind of like more conscious on it? is it going straight to the browser tabs? You said you search in the companies, say if
Yeah.
someone's listening and they have a more defined niche in marketing, how do they kind of get more tailored with the search and then build their process around that?
So I think, and again, I'm still experimenting with things to be honest with you to see what really works well. But for me right now, I think what's helping is truly like niching down, and that's taken a while to get there. I used to
Yeah.
be very broad, and now just talking to a number of different people who've been freelancing for like 10 plus years, their advice to me was like, why aren't you talking more about like nutrition and wellness? Like, you came from that. That was your experience for 15 years in a corporate company working for a nutrition company. Like, you should talk more about that, especially if you're doing the website redesigns and refreshes for people. Like, that completely makes sense, and that's what you want to do. And I'm like, okay, yep, it is. It's one of those things that like I feel like you experiment for a little bit and then it's a very obvious statement and you're like, yep, I
Yeah.
need to be louder about that. I need to be clear about that. So
Yeah.
for me right now, it is like going into search because I don't have a sales navigator, so I don't pay for that either. I know some people who have sales navigator and use that. Do you use that?
I have before. I did the free trial, and the best feature of Sales Navigator is being able to have the active users like filter. Other than that, it's very like I would use it very similarly, but that is a big one because sometimes that's I mean that's what makes out because I feel like so much of the outbound I do goes on def because so I'm getting more conscious of checking like their activity.
Yes.
One thing I was going to ask was you go ahead, I forgot, so keep going.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so like, yeah, for right now, I'm not using, I don't pay for Sales Navigator, but you make a very good point, and
Oh,
that,
yes, what I was about to say. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. This was a really so there's like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But if I cut you off, that means I'm interested. So if there's like two premium versions. There's the business one, and then there's the like get hired one for there's like two different levels of them. One of them's like slightly cheaper. Is there a difference in terms of access? Do you know of? Or I know one of them allows for the custom button, the other one doesn't. But they're very similar in prices. So one of them markets itself as like I remember the names exactly. One of them's like land a job faster, and then it was like grow your business. But they're both premium.
you're right.
Do you know that all the difference between those?
I don't because right now I'm using the free version of premium to see if I feel like it really makes a difference. Like, I'm just
Okay.
not, I'll be honest, I'm just not at a place where I want to spend on premium. What is it? I wrote it down. It's like, I
It's
think
like
that,
$50 a month. Yeah.
wait, is that all that it is? Maybe that's not so
First,
bad then. I thought it was,
yeah. You can look it
okay.
up. So it's like
Maybe it's not
40.
horrible.
I'll look it up right now too.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
it's not too horrible
are you
because
just you're on the free trial right now?
yes, that's what I'm doing right now.
So you haven't had it like before this month?
I did, like in the beginning, I remember using premium. But you know what? I don't think I was I don't want to use the word aggressive, but as intentional with getting as many connections as possible, right? Because I think that's the big difference between premium and not having premium is it limits how many connections you can make with messages that you send, right? And so like with premium, you can send so many like connection requests a lot more than you can with the free version.
Yeah.
And being
So yeah, okay.
connected, oh, go ahead.
So LinkedIn Premium Career, $29.99 a month. LinkedIn Premium Business, $59.99 a month. Sales Navigator is like $150 a month, I think,
Okay.
or 50 a month.
Okay, I guess that's not so bad. The business, I would probably go for the business version. I think if it were me, I'll look into it a little bit more because I think I have the free trial for another couple weeks. But I've just noticed a big difference in having access with connections. And as you know, like when you connect with somebody, you will also get access to their network, right? So like then
Yeah.
your posts are like feeding in, ideally your posts are showing up in their feeds. They're seeing you more often, especially if you're someone who's posting every day, which you and I pretty much do. I mean, there's Sundays I take off a lot, but right now I'm kind of posting Monday through Saturday.
Yeah,
So
I've seen you do every day, don't you? Stuff on
Almost.
Sunday.
I haven't been on Sundays because I kind of feel like I truly need a day of rest. So I
Yeah.
haven't, I haven't been doing Sundays because, to your point of what we were just talking about, if you're going to post and not be available to engage, there's not much you get out of it. But I guess other
Yep.
people could argue, but your content's out there. So that
Hmm.
is just another increased opportunity for someone to see you, which isn't
Yep.
false. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. I haven't put a lot of pressure on myself, I think, to post on Sundays. I kind of give myself that day
Hmm.
off, like if I want to,
Yeah.
you know?
I yes, please do. So the that's like the curse of high performers. Like, oh man,
Ugh,
I should only go 80% above and beyond, and not
right.
100%.
I know, I
So
know. Very hard on
the
ourselves.
difference, I know, yeah. But there's career and there's business. So this will kind of wrap a bow on the LinkedIn
Okay.
topic. But so you get 400 connection requests a month for each of the premium versions. So you get the same amount of connections, but you don't get unlimited people browsing and you can see your profile for 365 days. LinkedIn. So it doesn't look like there's a ton of. They should do a better job of differentiating between the two because right now it's like double the price, and it looks
Fair.
like the only thing you get is the unlimited people browsing. That's the only because I'm looking at like side by side. So I wonder
Interesting.
what because I have the career version, I have the lower version, because it is 39.99 a month. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
But that was wrong then. The last one that I read first was wrong. So it's 39.99 a month. But I think because I can get 400 requests a month, so I try and send 40 every day. Yeah, I know. Tell me
That's
about it.
good. That's really, I mean, I commend you on
Yeah.
that. That's good because I kind of feel like I
Mhm.
struggle with consistency on that. Because what are you doing? Like going
Well,
in, I think you and I've talked about this, but you're kind of like going in and searching for like marketing directors or
mhm.
founders, right?
Yes, kind of scary how accurate that was. So yeah, and this is like me wanting to get refined on like, okay, what is optimal behavior? How do
Yeah.
I make the most of because it's not the most enjoyable thing, right? It's kind of, I call it like my coffee
Yeah.
bear every morning.
Yeah, it just takes time, right? I mean,
Yeah,
and you've got so many website projects you're probably working on as well with deadlines,
yeah,
and it's just, yeah, I don't know
mhm,
about you, but and you know what? There's just days too where I feel more energized for it than others, where like
mhm,
I can get
yeah,
on and I'm like typing away and I'm like, oh, there's so and so,
yes,
I want to talk to them, and there's this other post, and oh, I wonder what she's doing, and then I want to talk to them. So then, it
yes,
does depend on the day because I have noticed there's just certain days where I'm really excited about it, and oh my gosh, 2 hours have gone by. I
yes,
need to like stop because I need to actually get some other items done.
yes.
So
Yeah.
in a
And
way,
I want to say too, like 100% and you kind of feel like you have a commitment to like respond on everyone's posts. So like in this network that you've built, it was like, oh, like if they comment on mine, I have to comment on theirs. So I want to say personally with you, we comment on our stuff, on each other's stuff all the time. If there's ever a day or if a week goes by and I never hear from you on LinkedIn, you don't have to worry about how that affects our personal relationship because I think that's the stuff that goes on in our minds. It's like, oh man,
yeah,
they're gonna think I don't care
no.
about him anymore. I don't comment on him. It's like reality is like I have two kids and I work my ass off every day and I just didn't have time to do it. So,
No,
but
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Same for you. Same for you. I feel that way too. You're right. You know what? Nobody talks about that either. The inner
yeah,
dialogue that we're thinking of just
hmm,
this like act of reciprocating, right? Of like
yeah,
you've commented on mine. I want to comment on you. I want to support you. I know we're all trying to build our businesses here. That's a good
hmm,
point. Yeah.
yeah.
Another podcast
That's
episode.
what I know. Yeah, there's so much. Okay, but anyway, like branching off onto LinkedIn, I want to get more into your story,
Okay.
because I mean you're the star here. So you worked in a traditional job, and a big part of your story, especially that you post about a lot, is sort of the transition from a traditional role to being full time freelance. And
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of similar stuff. I think in terms of the actual deliverables you offer are like that's obviously pivots. But how has that time in a traditional industry, in a traditional career, benefited you? What did you learn, and what is that transition for you to being full time freelance? What is that like? Because you've been in it for almost 4 years now, right? or
Well,
longer?
freelance is only about 2 years because I
Okay.
didn't when I left my corporate job, I that was in July of 2021, and I didn't fully understand what my next step was. In all honesty, as far as I knew at that point, I could have been taking 6 months off just to kind of have like a mental pause after COVID, kids at home, and just figuring out like what's my next move. And it could have been another corporate job, honestly.
Hmm.
I don't think at that point, I did not foresee a business necessarily. I had
Hmm.
been publishing online and I really enjoyed it. It was on medium.com. And
Hmm.
I just realized, like, oh, this is kind of fun. And they have their own community. If you're on Medium, I feel like when you're on there a lot and you're always posting articles, you kind of find your own community within some of those publications. And I'm not on there hardly anymore. Like I still repurpose blog posts that I publish on my site and then
Hmm.
republish them on Medium, but I'm really not on Medium a lot, like reading everybody else's stuff like I
Hmm.
was. So it really took, honestly, I had written probably over 400 different articles. And a friend of mine was like, Allison, if you want to keep doing this, you got to find clients. Like, you've got to stop trying to write an article a day and publish, and you've got to start like finding clients. And I'm like, yeah, I know you're right, but
Hmm.
like I don't, for whatever reason, I just was not pushing myself to like, take the next step forward to make it happen. So Tim Dennings, he's an author on Medium, very popular. He was in some different corporate jobs and then became a writer, freelancer, and he's made millions doing that now. And I saw a couple of articles and they were saying how if you're a writer and you want to build a business and you're not on LinkedIn, then you're completely missing the boat. And I was like, okay, well, I'm on LinkedIn, but it's got all my old like corporate title stuff. It doesn't say anything about me, writing content or any of that.
Hmm.
So it was like really last year in January of 2023, I was like, you know what? I think I can take my 15 years of like working in digital marketing and working on websites, and I can pair that with SEO and what I've understood about it, how it's needed, how you apply that to your writing. And I'll be an SEO writer. So out of the box, that's how I marketed myself. I'm an SEO writer. I write content for websites. Same stuff that I'm doing today.
Hmm.
And that's when I started posting, and it was like 2 months later when I was doing that and I updated my profile that a past coworker saw that I was making this pivot, and she was volunteering for a nonprofit organization, and they were doing a website and they needed help with somebody to write, website copy for them. And she's like, would you be interested? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So that's how that started with one project. They're a retainer client of mine today. And then, I applied for other part time writing jobs on LinkedIn as well. And I landed a SEO blog writing position with a B2C. And I was with them for a year until, like, because of budget, they had to scale back on content creation and put it towards some other things. But
Hmm.
I still get referrals, from her to this day. And it's really like those two opportunities that were the moment for me where I was like, okay, like I can do this. Like this can become
Hmm.
something. And that's like where it started. But
Yeah.
yes, in a long-winded way, that's my, I guess, story coming into it
Hmm.
and, where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I mean, and that resonates really personally with me is that the moment you, and I've heard this from mentors and stuff, but the moment you get paid for what you do, that validates the concept, but you almost need that second one too to kind of like, okay, like it wasn't a mistake. These people
Hmm.
invested in me and I can deliver on this. And
Yeah.
I think it's just slowly getting that ball rolling in terms of, because I mean, imposter syndrome is always going to be there in terms of whether or not you can do what you're doing. And I only worked at an agency for less than a year, 8 months, and getting out of that employee time for money mindset is just the biggest thing that
Hmm.
I'm still to this day struggling with.
Same.
Because there's such that peace of mind of saying like, okay, I'm in the office, I'm clocked in, I'm making money, and there's not that like low level like anxiety of like, oh, I have to be working. It's like that little reassurance in your mind. Whereas, you're the primary beneficiary of, all the actions that you put in, but you can't really measure it. So much of like what you and I do and what a lot of, freelance marketers and everything else they do is a lot of guaranteed work without a guaranteed payout. And that there's that peace of mind is something that, you kind of have to make your peace with, or that lack of peace of mind is something you have to kind of make your peace with.
Yeah.
But how did you kind of hone in on your niche and like SEO, copywriting? I know that's what you did kind of at your full-time job. But for someone, say like a young marketer, someone who's trying to find their voice, their niche in the industry, how do
Yeah.
you recommend they, find that? Is it through posting content? Is it just through doing it organically, maybe on the side, organically? Is it through like posting content about it maybe while they're at their full-time job, starting in it? How do you kind of like find your passion and then ideally make that more of your schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I would say where I've been fortunate is I was able to like leave my job and start with, yes, there's a certain level of pressure, but I have a husband who also has a full-time job and has health
Hmm.
benefits, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge. That's huge living in the United States.
Hmm.
And so that made it, that made it easier. But yeah, to your point, I would tell, and I've had people call me who are still in their 9 to 5s and asking me like, how are you doing what you're doing and whatnot? And I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not making the corporate amount I was making, and I think that's the kicker right now, honestly. And why I was telling you, reflecting on this year, I'm looking at it and evaluating like time spent towards my own content, which is non-working dollars, right? And time spent on client work, which brings in income. And I've honestly probably been 50-50, which isn't
Hmm.
probably great, right? Like I
Yeah.
probably need to be upping the time spent on getting clients. And those were some interesting conversations I had like with another coach and with another freelancer who's been doing this for like 10 years. And if I want to keep doing it, that's just kind of how I have to shift. So I have to either figure out processes that make my own content creation go a lot faster, like to make it possible, or to your point where we were just talking about with LinkedIn, I have to shift a little bit. So for
Hmm.
anybody starting out, income is a very real thing. And I would say absolutely start while you're in a full-time job and start creating content. If you have this idea of this is what I do in my for me it was like in my full-time job I worked on websites, or I worked with teams working on websites, so I knew what went into it from like discovery to launch. So
Hmm.
whatever your role is, if you're an accountant, if you're in finance, figure out like what piece in that full-time job that you could also do on the side for other people, right? I'm sure there's an offering that you're already doing in your full-time job that you could just start a business doing, on your own. And you've got the safety of having that full-time job, at least for now, right? Like there
Hmm.
is something to that. And I know people who've asked me about it. I'm like, if you're at all interested, just be mindful. You're not, I mean, from my experience, you're not going to make the income that you did like right out of
Hmm.
corporate. You're not. It's a very like long-term play, and
Hmm.
it's such a different mindset having been in that 9 to 5 structure and then switching over to be like, oh, I'm a business owner now and I know how to do this and I know how to pitch and I know how to like advocate for what I do. It's such a different experience. Like I've been so grateful
Hmm.
for it because it's
Yeah.
pushed me like individually, but I would never tell anybody quit your full-time job and just go for it. No,
Hmm.
I would say test the waters on the side for a little bit. And then if you
Hmm.
can see momentum and you can kind of figure it out like little by little, you'll kind of know then at what point financially like you can step away, or at
Hmm.
least have a lot of savings before you decide to like take the leap and try this different path. That's what I
Yeah.
would recommend.
Yeah, it's so hard to, when people come to you for advice, it's so hard to feel like you have to caveat everything. Like, okay, this is where I
Yeah.
could from. And I say it all the time too, is like, I am so blessed to be like, we're all very blessed, but I am so blessed to be in this position where I have such a good support system, like, with my family.
Yeah.
And I am also taking into account, I live very lean, like, and I
Yeah.
do not have kids. I don't have dependencies. I'm at this phase of life where I literally can. I just told you how much I work. I literally can be that selfish with my time because I don't have these other constraints, whether they're generated or artificial, that other people have. And I try to be very mindful of that too. And I think that we all have our advantages of that. So I think before ever giving advice or saying that you should do something else, take into like having the self awareness around the other person's context and making more tailored recommendations too, and also like where they're coming from, what's important to them, because knowing what the end goal is different for everybody, and I think that even subconsciously changes like our filter behind why we do what we do, and it may or may not apply to that particular person. So
Yeah,
I think
for
it's a really
sure.
good point.
Yeah, yeah,
Really good point.
absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah.
So how would you say, going back to your career transition, you had a corporate career in marketing and now you're full-time freelance. How has your presence on LinkedIn supported that positively or negatively? I know we spend a lot of
Um,
time there. How much of it is attributed to that? And because I know you've been on other platforms. You started on LinkedIn. That's where you kind of honed your chops. But what role has LinkedIn played in a career transition from full-time marketing job to doing it for yourself?
it's made the biggest difference, honestly.
Hmm.
I think about what was my perception of LinkedIn when I was working in the 9 to 5. It's kind of laughable because I absolutely didn't pay any attention to LinkedIn. Like I said, I had the typical, like when you got promoted, you updated your title, you'd go on there to check out maybe what friends, were doing in terms of where they were working, if they'd been promoted. It's what I call like being the LinkedIn lurker, right? Like you were
Hmm.
going on there and you were checking out what people were doing, but there was no way I was posting. Like no way.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and so it's funny because, there's a whole different level of pressure on you when you're trying to build something, yourself. And for me, I honestly don't think I would still be doing this right now if I didn't have that platform, because it's not only been a tool for lead generation, where I can post my content, people see it, reach out to me, or I'm reaching out to them, or I'm working with a client and then they give me another referral, and it kind of continues to build a little bit from there. But just like running into people like you, Andy, and others that are trying to do this, and we meet and we talk and we discuss our challenges and we have questions and we go, what's working well for you? What would you suggest? Like, that's been huge, because when I was in corporate, you were going into an office, people were surrounding
Hmm.
you. I had a boss who I could ask questions, when things came up, or I could say, hey, I'm thinking I want to do this. What do you recommend? So LinkedIn's been that replacement for me a little bit, right? It's been that
Yeah.
place to find others to really ask these like tough questions and find these folks who've been doing this much longer than I have, so that I can just say, hey, am I thinking about this the right way, or what do you think? And I don't know about you, but I have been so pleasantly surprised by how kind everybody has been. Like,
Hmm.
honestly, so
Yeah.
kind, so giving in terms of their advice. I'm just so glad I gave this platform a second chance, because first impression, I absolutely never saw it for like what it's been to me now, like in
Hmm.
this season of my life and trying to build a business. So that's been really cool to kind of see that change in evolution from what, like how I first viewed it, to how much more powerful and helpful it is. That's been kind of cool. It's like an
Yeah.
unexpected, like, wow, that's not at all what I thought, and yet I'm so pleasantly surprised. Like, how many times does that happen in life, right? You've got to
Right.
like enjoy that and kind of take it in. So,
Yeah. Well, and that was like the preconceived notions of like what things are, and just based on your past experiences. So like LinkedIn, like this is not the cool platform to be on. It's not the one that, I feel like especially a lot of people my age are spending time on. But if you look at the actual what the lives are of the people that you want to be like where are they spending their time, or the people that you want
yeah,
to work with,
yeah,
I think it's better to default your behavior towards things where you want to associate people. And your point too on like being engaging and having sort of that team environment, I miss that so much. Like there's something that you can't put a price tag on in terms of being able to share your experiences with other people, like sharing your lived experiences, building something together, and then having a team behind you, like being able to show up for other people, validating your work. And I think LinkedIn is a great outlet for that if you're a freelancer or if you're in marketing and you just want to share what you have going on, because there's especially a lot of people work remotely too, and even that feeling is dulled when you're not like in person interacting, trying to build something with a group of people. And that's what I
Yeah.
want to cultivate kind of as I build a design agency where I have, a team where I can lift them up and bounce ideas off of them, and then share the wins and build cool things for other people together, because that's like where a ton of the reward comes from, is
Oh, yeah.
even like the small things too, like the nuances of office work. And I think a lot of that is lost. So if you can find a way to make LinkedIn your outlet for connecting, holding yourself accountable, sharing the journey with other people, and lifting each other up, I think that's a great use case that not a lot of people talk about. So
Oh yeah, and I mean, I just kind of feel like just looking back on like career in general, I don't remember all the details of the individual projects I worked on. And I worked on a lot of website projects for nutrition. But you know what I do remember? I remember certain people, and I remember the way I felt working with certain people, and I remember the relationships I had. And honestly, all that like marketing learning that I was able to grab a hold on to, like just being in the corporate environment and just kind of learning along the way all these different things, building relationships, that was so important, because at the end of the day, like people who like working together tend to produce better work, right? Because you can be more honest with the process and what's going on. You can just be supportive, transparent, that kind of thing. And I would say just like transitioning from that like over into the freelance space, that continues to be important, if not more. I feel like it's amplified even more for you to like be focused on building relationships. So that's something I've enjoyed kind of pushing myself on as an entrepreneur versus like in the corporate setting. Like, yes, it's so important like in the corporate world because you're working with so many multiple parties. But oh my gosh, when you have your own business, it's huge. Like your partners that you want to actually do other creative work with, potential, clients, it's such a big thing. So yeah, like if LinkedIn can help you with that, and it has, I've seen it, it's proof, right? We've seen it.
yeah.
You should absolutely utilize it.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think there's such a big value in just like hearing the people's experiences that, like I said, that have accomplished what you want to accomplish. So trying to reverse, and there's something to be said about living your own story, but there's also something to be said about reverse engineering success.
Yeah.
And the story I just told you about wanting to build my own sort of small design marketing agency was the result of an interview I had with a guest who is a past guest on this show, and he just started it exactly where I was. Like he is in Grand Rapids. His name's Kevin Camus, but he founded a design agency, or more of a marketing agency called Launch Kit, where he basically had a book of business for as a freelancer for himself, as a content specialist, videographer, more in that niche. And he just started slowly hiring a small team of 20 somethings with different skill sets. And he's basically just vlogging, sharing their journey across, all these platforms. And that's his form of marketing, is that people follow around along with their vlog content, taking people behind the scenes of projects, and really being able to share, the fulfillment of launching projects and sharing it with the team. And to me, like that's kind of what success looks like. And I think we all have to kind of like forge our own version. Like take these bits and pieces of the people that we look up to, like what does an ideal day in the life look like, and then kind of make your own version of it. And I think that's kind of what we're all doing as we go through here. But I want to ask you kind of a hypothetical question. It's not a hypothetical question, but a hypothetical scenario, and then how Allison would apply it to, given her expertise and experience, of
Okay.
what they would say to this person. And like given everything that we've already said about like caveating advice and so forth, and just like cutting straight to the advice, like this is what you need to do, best practices recommendations. So
Okay.
I'm a 22-year-old marketer. I just graduated from college. I'm in a full-time job that maybe I don't enjoy, and I want to have a creative outlet for my skill sets, which I feel are far above, are not being valued to the extent that I feel they should be in a full-time job. What is the outlet through content, through just getting myself out there, maybe putting the first inklings of steps in place to be able to make what I do as a freelancer full time apart from this job? What is that?
Oh, good question. So I would say first, you have to be a person who just realizes you got to get comfortable a little bit with being uncomfortable. And when I say that, I mean, when you get on LinkedIn, I think for some people, maybe it's more natural than others, but the biggest thing is not being afraid to reach out and connect with people that inspire you. So I think part of it is stumbling upon somebody in an industry with certain expertise. Maybe, they're posting content, you're really enjoying it, not being afraid to take that next step, that after like connecting with them, sending them a message and telling them, hey, I love, XYZ of what you're doing. I'm doing this. I hope one day to aspire to do this, and starting the conversation without anything around, an ask, right? Like not going out of the gate wanting that person necessarily to give you anything in return, just to kind of make the connection and make it known of like, I just really admire what you're doing, or, I look up to you, right? Because I think when you're young and you're in your early 20s, you don't really have all the connections that everybody else might have who've been, in different industries or careers for 10 plus years. So there's a lot you can start doing just by taking the first step and like connecting and making it known. This is what I like what you're saying here. Like this makes sense. And then not being afraid also to post like your own content, your own, what you are an expert on. Cause you said like for what you were talking about with that example, that they feel like they have skills that are not being valued or, appreciated. So take those and create content that showcases that, right? And then put it on LinkedIn for other people to see. I remember there was somebody's post, I think it was Terry Rice. I really like following him. And
Yeah.
I made a comment about something about like how, getting some kind of attention from other people. And it's so cool when you have these speaking events and you go on stage and you can make these connections and you've got this group of, 60 plus people that you get to talk to about this certain topic. And he was like, yeah, and you know what? You've got like a billion people here on LinkedIn that you could potentially be reaching out to. And that's an opportunity that I think we all don't realize, is that you don't have to go on stage. You don't have to be in person to speak and to like influence people. You can do it on LinkedIn by sharing what you know and reaching a whole lot of people, maybe even more so than in any of those opportunities. And I know you've probably found this, Andy, as well as I have, of just putting yourself out there and being clear on what you do, who you help, and then also just being kind and supportive with other people and what they're doing. The opportunities are crazy, like how they can come out of the wall and give you a chance to do something maybe you thought you would never do before. And that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned with LinkedIn too, of like these little hidden gems, if you will, that you maybe never pictured yourself doing. And then just by being active and talking with others and being open, these things fall into your lap just through connection, through conversation. So yeah, absolutely. If you're in this position, and I would even take it a step further, you don't have to be 20. If you're in this position later in life and you're in a job that you don't enjoy, start talking about the things that you are, an expert on, that you do have knowledge on. Put it out there and stick with it. There's a lot to do with like consistency and making connections for opportunities to open up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, like we talked about, it's so hard to balance the long-term plays of these things versus what's essential right now. So
Yeah.
if you're in a full-time job, you have that essential, you have the dedication, you have the commitment that you've already made to what you're doing right now. But then you just have this voice inside of your head, like, what would it look like if I could express myself and really just have full creative control? And obviously with the caveat, the grass is always greener. We talked a lot about our own personal struggles, which we could have another whole podcast about. But yeah, I think that's a really good roadmap for anyone that just wants to get started, because that's literally the hardest part. And then you can deal with the challenges that come, like spending too much time on it and
Yeah.
optimizing your time more productively. Jay Klaus, our role model, says like, what was this? Is more better than new. So try doing something and then do it better, and then you can worry about optimizing. And then if that you run that loop through several different times and it still doesn't work, that's when you move on to something new. But at least you've gone through that trial period where you made the first post, probably doesn't get as many engagements as you'd like, but you have to continue to optimize it and get better at what you do, kind of find your voice a little bit before
Yeah.
you can call it a thorough experiment. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really good framework for that person to follow. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. I think it's all about like having a growth mindset to some degree and looking at like challenges as opportunities, right? Like when something's not working, I think that's what makes some of these entrepreneurs amazing. They're
Hmm.
so good at like taking very challenging things in their life or things that are not working out and being able to view them as an opportunity of like, hey, how do I pivot, right? How do I pivot and do something different? And that is a mindset not only good like in running a business, but good in life, when things are
Yeah.
not going your way. How are you going to flip the script? Like, how are you going to
Hmm.
do something different? So I think that's
Yeah.
really important too, to kind of like fine tune that mindset of like how you're looking at it. Because every experience you can learn from, even the ones
Hmm.
that are crappy, you can learn from
Yeah.
it, right?
It's so hard to do, like in the moment, like removing emotions and just trying to looking at everything as feedback, data. It's like, okay,
Yep.
like separating the moment between emotional reaction between something that could be perceived as bad versus actually using it for a productive means and saying like, okay, how do I make the most of this and not just like fall into a puddle of tears?
Correct.
Because we all do that, not just
Yeah,
me,
no, it's
but
possible. I mean, everybody has that moment, right? Like we all have
yeah.
that moment where like this really sucks and maybe I messed up so badly that I feel like I can't recover. But even the jobs I didn't like in my life, when I look back now, there was always something like I learned from it that I could kind of take with me from there on. And you don't have to stay stuck. You have choices. There's always ways to kind of look at it differently, I think, but it starts with action. Like what were we talking about of like it's the hardest to get started. You
Mhm.
have to take action. At the end of the day, no one's going to be doing it for you. You have to be the one to like take the next step forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this is great. So, to kind of like wrap a bow on this, like let's talk about you. So, what has you excited, whether it's for this next week in your business, in your personal life, family? What's one thing that's, when you get out of bed in the morning, you're just like, man, like I'm excited. Like this is what
Yeah.
I'm here for.
Okay. Well, I mean, to begin with, like, I tell people this, but I get to build a business. I do view this as a privilege. I view it as something that I never saw coming, and yet I'm so blessed that I've had the opportunity that even, let's say, even something crazy would happen next year, and I would have to go back to getting a full time job, because of salary or benefits or whatever. I will always be so grateful like for this experience because it's really challenged me in a way that I know staying at my job that I was in for 15 years would not have done. Okay? So like for that right there, when I wake up in the morning, I always think, wow, I get to do this. And I'm
Hmm.
very appreciative.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of just other things in general, I think it's been really helpful, like I said, just getting clear on the niche and tapping into my experience, tapping into my story of where I've come from to further like strengthen how am I different? Because let's face it, there is a sea of people who are copywriters, who do SEO writing, who do design, right? And at the end of the day, like what sets you apart? And it's your story. It's your background, it's what you've been able to do. And the more vocal you are about your story, like that's just going to further get the word out of like what you're doing and who you help and help you grow your business. So for me, we're getting to the end of 2024, looking at 2025, and I just think I'm super excited to just see additional growth, to see like with niching down how this then impacts my business. Do I see like a good uptick from it? And just, I think just the additional opportunities of maybe doing some speaking events, doing more podcasts. Like I love this. Just being able to do that, like I get excited. That's really fun when I think about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the reason I always like to kind of end nearly with that question is like it's that perspective change. It's like we all have something that we're looking forward to, and I think keeping those things top of mind. Like I already have a whiteboard here where I write that down, write that stuff down, so it is top of mind. Um, because in the short term, you have to have those things that kind of like stoke the fire, and keep you aligned on that path. It's like I'm actually so blessed to be doing what I'm doing right now, and
Yeah.
all of these things that come up during the day that I make much bigger than they are. This is what that's either in pursuit of, or I have this to distract myself kind of in the meantime. Because especially with
Yeah.
all these long-term plays that we have,
Yeah.
a lot of it is kind of finding those things to distract you in the meantime as those things get realized, and we put in like a cross to bear, I said every morning, of the things that aren't the most enjoyable. So keeping those short-term wins kind of close.
Yeah.
But
What are
this
you
is
looking
a
forward to? Tell me, Andy, what are you looking forward to?
well, I've been really looking forward to wow, a lot lately. It's been a really good week, but I'm looking
Good.
forward to the podcast a lot, kind of like you said, having more creative input and just seeing it grow because it started as me recording interviews as I drove an hour and a half back and forth from the agency in my car.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Wow, no way. I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's
I almost worked.
crazy.
Yeah, thanks.
Good for you. That's really cool, actually. Talk about taking
Yeah.
action and not letting things restrict you, right? Like not saying, "Oh, but I need to be set up in the studio and I need to be doing this." Like you're like, "No, I'm just
Mm,
going to do this in the car while driving."
yeah.
Good for you.
There's a
That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of footage and stuff I have to share from the
That's
early
cool.
days, but yeah, like the podcast being able to make it something that I never thought it would be, and also
Yeah.
on the project side of things. So we just had a site launch last week for a client that helped me realize that this is kind of why I started. Someone that really valued the work, someone that could afford the work, someone that
Yeah.
was really invested in the process and just really got the most out of it and was very open and engaging with feedback and also just getting better at what I do every day. So doing hard things. I've been really pushing myself. I have a background in kind of being really restrictive in terms of what I allow myself to do in terms of like exercise, nutrition, stuff like that. So I'm really starting to go with a more detailed, intentional approach to gaining weight and being healthy and how kind of having these different avenues in terms of where you bucket your attention and time that all
Mhm.
kind of are productive. So we can kind of distract ourselves. Maybe things in business aren't so good, but I just hit this PR in the gym. So kind
Yeah.
of diversifying your investment into what you define as happiness, and
Yes.
also like my relationships have been in a much better place than they had, especially this first year of going full time. Very much neglecting the relationships that I had and I had built, but nowadays I'm prioritizing responding to those people first and taking
Yeah.
the first step to actually making sure I'm reaching out because that's it's something that has and I'm still working on to this day is prioritizing that more because you start to realize like there's a long-term vision to this, like as I start to talk to people and get more advice and feedback, is that there's a long-term vision to this and it all ends with people at your funeral, and
That's right.
whether or not they're there or not, it depends on the life you build in the meantime. So
Exactly.
those
Exactly.
yeah, that's kind of how I'm diversifying my
Good.
million thoughts during the day. But
Yeah,
back
I'm
back
glad.
to
That's
you.
awesome. No, I think that's
Thank you for
awesome, but
asking
that's
that.
so it's well,
Um,
it's so important because we can get so tied up, and honestly, when you're young, like you can get so tied up in climbing the ladder, and that's kind of like where I was at or a few years ago now, where it was like I don't want to do this anymore. Like I
mhm,
want to be a more present mom who's home when my kids get off the bus at 3:30, who can run them to soccer practice at 5, who's not like stressed out trying to figure out how do I make this work, in a job that requires me to be there till like 6 or 6:30. And like you said, it all ends the same way for everybody. We're
yeah,
all gonna like come to the end of our life. We may be laying in a bed, and what do we want around us? Like, we want people who love us around us. And
mhm,
that takes intentional time in your relationships. And I think along the way in this world, you have to like be focused on what's the most important, because there's way too many flashy things when it comes to money and it comes to titles and it comes to stuff, right? So like
yeah,
what's the most important? And I think that helps guide you on like where you need to go. So you're very
yeah.
smart to be thinking about that right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, yeah. It's you don't know the whole story, I guess, but yeah. Thank you for those words, and thank you for asking that too, because it
Yeah.
is this is what the purpose of like the long form conversations are. So I appreciate that. But tell
Yeah.
us all about where people can find you, where should they go next? LinkedIn, obviously, but any other places that people can find you online and where they can take the next step.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Allison Dittmer. I also have a website, AllisonDittmer.com, and then I have a free weekly newsletter that goes out every Thursday called the Organic Freelancer. It's focused on how to be more strategic, like with the content that you're writing. So a lot around website tips, SEO, and then I also love to fill in like a fill your cup moment as a form of like motivation. Maybe there's a story I've come across or something that I'm kind of like experiencing or going through along the way of building my business that I like to put in there too, to hopefully like be a motivator for others to continue with this important work that we're doing and the stuff that we love doing, right? So yes, those are all the places where you can find me.